Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Scenic Route, where we talk with women who took the long way home and love it. I'm Victoria Stewart, financial empowerment coach and a recovering 20-year civilian Navy engineer. And this show exists because of the question I couldn't shake for a long time. I did everything right, so why does everything feel so wrong? So in every episode, I sit down either myself or with someone who hit the same wall in different parts of their lives and found a different road than maybe what they expected when they were kids or even in their 20s. And every guest answers the same question. What was the thing that finally cracked it open for you? So today, my guest is a fellow Profit for Keeps coach. We were in the same certification cohort. Shelby Herber and I have now been friends. It's been 2 years, an eventful 2 years.
Woohoo!
It feels longer than that.
Yeah.
I feel like.
I know. Seriously.
So
This might be our anniversary month.
I know. I think what would have been May 25th or was it April 25th? Like almost where we started. I can't remember now.
I think it's April. We'll have to go back and look.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, how wild and synchronistic maybe. So, Shelby and I have very different paths and a lot of similarities in some of our experience. So I'm very curious to see where this conversation goes. So Shelby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Shelby Renae Herber, and I work with heart-led entrepreneurial women in the healing and wellness space who are incredibly gifted at what they do and yet struggle or feel that money is challenging and it's impacting their lives on multiple levels, whether it's relationally, in their business, in their partnership, with how much they're allowing themselves to dream, etc. And so I feel really passionate about supporting these women, like as a financial empowerment coach and a financial educator. As Victoria said, I'm also Profit for Keeps certified coach. And I also come from a background of trauma-informed and holistic well-being. And so for me, that really supports me in understanding that for women like this, for women like us, money isn't just about the numbers. It's about our nervous system, our beliefs, our family systems, our identity, and even what's passed down through the generations before us. And so I'm just really excited to be here with you, Victoria, and talking and sharing a bit of my story and connecting with other people, other women that are out there.
Yeah, so exciting. So is there a time in your life where it felt like you were on a trajectory, whether it was like you felt you were on the highway, on your way somewhere, and there was something that came through that just felt like it snapped things out or woke you up or had you pivot a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think there have been multiple moments of like those snaps.
Yeah.
But when I reflect back at perhaps one of the more earlier times, a little background. I came from a family of entrepreneurial parents, and money was always a constant stress in our household. Money wasn't really talked about, but the energetics of money were real. And I think it was also a part of my family and the culture and society we were living in of doing more, pushing harder, working harder, not necessarily smarter, and just go, go, go. And so at a young age, I really picked up that patterning, I picked up that programming. And so yeah, I remember as far back as I can think of just, okay, like focusing on school, like work and school were the priority, like getting good grades, studying, like saying no to fun to study more, that sort of pattern. And, I guess one of those moments of the snap early on is that in junior high, around 8th grade, I did a big culmination project and shared about my grandpa's favorite place to travel. My grandparents on my father's side were avid world travelers. And that place happened to be Poland. And long story short, that summer, my grandparents gifted me my first international trip to go with them to visit Poland, to visit Czech Republic. My grandma's super into generational learning, figuring out more of our family line, that sort of thing. And so we had to tie it into Slovakia because that's where where her line is from. And so anyway, that experience at a young age like that just really opened up my mind. I had never been out of the country at that point before. And just being around different cultures, different language, different ideas, the culinary sensory experience, the music I was hearing, it just really lit something up inside of me. And I caught the travel bug at that time. But I would say that was a sprinkling of kind of what's to come, and I think where I'm at now. Hence Victoria shared I'm here in Mexico traveling.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe this is the time to bring in one of the phrases that you do use, right? Is planting the seed. This planted that seed that has taken you many places and has kind of guided you, right? It feels like a guiding North Star or something along those lines. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think that has been present ever since. And even before then too, but I think that energy has been more available and accessible at that point onward. And then life as it does, I think it just got back into the grind, transitioning to high school, harder classes, trying to sign up for all the AP classes, getting good grades, straight A's. And really preparing for this trajectory of, no, I'm going to college. And then and following this succinct, more westernized way of, these are the steps. I need to be sure I'm checking the boxes and I'm doing as much as I can to be successful. So
when you went into college, where did you think you were going to go next? Were you I'm getting out of college and I'm getting I don't even know what you studied in college, but is it finance or was it environmental science, maybe? I can't even now remember. Which I feel like I should know.
No, good memory. No, it's good. Yeah. So when I was in school, in high school, I got more exposed to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And my grandparents were pushing that a little bit more for me as a woman in that field. And just through interest, I learned how to scuba dive with my dad. I always grew up loving the ocean, and I would always have fish tanks in my rooms growing up. We would go to the ocean every year as a family, if not multiple times. And so for me, I started growing a love of wanting to protect, wanting to study the ocean. And so coral reefs always fascinated me. That was really the direction I wanted to head after high school, was to be some sort of marine ecologist, marine scientist. And long story short, after applying to multiple schools, I ended up going to Western Washington University, which has an environmental science program there. And so that really was the trajectory at that point. Okay, getting a job in science. Yeah, technically I did. So in college, yeah, studying all the science classes, like graduating after getting all my credits and whatnot, I ended up meeting the partner that I'm with now. And he was a year younger. And so we had a vision of going into the Peace Corps together, but he still needed to finish his degree at school. And so I started working for what's called Washington Conservation Corps. There's many conservation corps across the country. And that was such an experience. It was a job that was 10 hours of work, 4 days a week, and you were outside the whole time. It led to some pretty incredible experiences of just being close to different rivers in Washington, rafting down rivers to remove invasive species, to protect the salmon habitat. And really our focus was working to build up the riparian zones for salmon, because we were directly working with a salmon conservation crew at the time. And so, yeah, I spent about a year doing that. And then that set us up for maybe about 6 months before leaving for the Peace Corps.
Going from environmental science to the Peace Corps to now you're in Mexico.
Yeah.
Doing workaways, building your coaching business. What happened in the middle to like get you here? Because this is exactly like what in my mind I envision as the scenic route, right? You're going like this, and then you take a turn, and then you go down this other way, and you come back this way. So I'm just very curious, like how to you, how did you make your way, whether it's like down a river with lots of turns and maybe some tributaries that you loop out and around? Like how did you get there from there?
Yeah, I think in order to share that, I have to also talk about health and wellness. And in college time, I took my first yoga class, and that was another gateway of just starting to be curious about alternative ways of thinking, of being, of engaging with life, of moving my body, of feeding my body, the mental and emotional aspects of health. And so just started to branch out and find mentors in the health and wellness field, and starting to listen to podcasts. I'd say that was like another snap of starting to open up my mind and just hear about other people's experiences with health and wellness. And so, leading up to Peace Corps, I started having some hormonal imbalance, and was starting to have these interesting health experiences. And one of them was I would have these like intermittent like seizure episodes that were like unclear of what the source was. Like it was kind of a thing of going to the emergency room, having blood tests, and like everything coming back normal and not really getting the answers I wanted. And this happened maybe a couple times or a few times before leaving for Peace Corps. And
scary.
Yet I still, it was a unknown time. I think as I reflect back now, this like aspect of almost disconnecting from my body and disconnecting from unprocessed emotions and things like that. And yet leading up to the Peace Corps, I was just so set on we are going. Like, I'm not going to allow my health and wellness to impact this trip, to impact this opportunity to go and volunteer abroad. And I think there was a little bit of that with a little bit of that resurrection of that first time I went abroad and wanting that experience again, and to experience that with, my best friend, my partner, just sounded so awesome. And service and volunteering is a value for us. So to be able to do that together, and it just so happened Peace Corps Philippines is where we ended up going, but the Philippines had the only program where both of our majors applied. And so it just seems so divine and just meant to be that when, I had a seizure episode a few months before leaving, I just really kind of re-engaged that patterning and programming of like, push through. No, like, we're making this happen. I'm not allowing me to prevent us from going. And so in that year before as well, I think it's important to note that I started taking birth control as well. So here I am, like, on birth control, having these like neurological episodes, yet really like driving to go to Peace Corps. And it happened. We left on July 3rd of 2016 and arrived to Peace Corps Philippines on 4th of July. It's the biggest volunteer program in Peace Corps, at least it was at the time. There were 75 of us volunteers that all came together in 3 different sectors. And so the sector that I pursued was coastal resource management. Cool. My partner, Dan, pursued children, youth, and family sector. And then there was an education sector. So 25 volunteers from all over the states came together, 25 in each cohort. And yeah, we arrived. How it works there is there's about a 2-week training and settling in, just integrating, getting certain shots, like getting exposed to language and presentations and just all of that. And during that time, of course, there's some people who end up leaving. It's a little intense. It's intense. And so after that point of time, how it transitioned is we all went to our intro sites for 1 month. So all 3 sectors separated on the big island of Luzon, close to Manila. And we spent a month with our fellow cohortees, and just, again, even more of an immersive experience, specialized for me, for example, in coastal resource management. And so it just felt really neat, like carrying, my interest over, like being in a place that has coral reefs, that have mangrove forests, that have sea turtles. It was a really exciting time. And of course, there was this like health and mental piece, like always in the background. Fairly early on, that kind of reared its head again when I went to the mall with a group of people. And if you've ever been in a mall in Manila, there's just so much stimuli and lights and sounds and people. And I experienced like a mild anxiety attack, like when we were there. And so it was just this reminder of like a shadow, or like what's lingering underneath. But again, I still was like, okay, no, like keep pushing forward, like kind of brushing that under the rug to have this experience.
Yeah. I remember being that age where it's like, well, I don't care how I feel. I'm still doing this thing because I said I was going to, or I really, really want to, because I wanted to. And I'm going to do it anyway.
Totally. And I think, this image of failure, or what that means, there are a lot of things at play. And as we've talked about before, it's like, no matter where you are, like your shadow parts are there with you. And, traveling across the world to the Philippines was no exception. And so Dan and I eventually were placed together in our permanent site after we went through that whole training period, and we lived in a town called Tiwi, and it was really beautiful. We met so many incredible people. I worked with the municipality there. Dan worked with a non-government organization in a town further south. And so we kind of started getting into our routines. Working for the government there was a lot different than working for a nonprofit there. And so it was just interesting to see these patterns come up to play of, projects weren't moving as fast, or, boxes weren't able to be checked as quickly, or receiving funding as quickly as like my partner Dan's experience. They were just very different.
Yeah.
And, there were other challenges with that time too, of just people constantly like looking at you, and like as a foreigner, and the way that we were engaged as foreigners, and just not necessarily catcalls, but just always being called Joe for the GI Joes that used to be there back in World War II. And so it's like always, hey Joe, or like, being called after. And I always got looks running like in our town, because there were really no other foreigners during that time there. And so this was kind of a time of me starting to explore, ways to support myself. Like we were living with a host family, which are beautiful people and we still keep in touch with. But, for a time we didn't have control over what we were eating. We didn't necessarily have control over, who we were surrounded with. Like we're in a home of a family, like we're family living, intergenerational living. And I started to feel a little out of control, even though of course control is, we're never in control. But I think at that time I was just really like trying to have a grip on my reality and my experience. And so, here I was, like the only outlet I really knew was like running. And so here I am running, and then being called after like in our town constantly, or, here I was doing yoga up on the balcony, but then people from down below would be able to see us. And I just remember this one time a band was coming through, like a marching band of students, and Dan and I were on the balcony watching, and all of a sudden the band noticed we were watching, and everyone turned and looking at us, and then we became like the band. So it's just like trying to paint a picture of, as someone who identifies more as an ambivert, maybe a little bit more on the introverted side, it was intense. And the stress was building in my system, in my experience. And, I didn't have the tools that I do now back then. And so, I kind of relied on exercise, and almost like excessive exercise, to maintain, to sustain like what I was feeling, to process. I mean, of course, exercise and movement is a beautiful outlet and a part of life and necessary for health and wellness. And the way I was approaching it was very imbalanced and disconnected from truly what I needed. And so in this time, I also stopped taking birth control. And so that was, I think, another added stress like on my body, of not having as much access as I would where I was coming from in the States for nutrient dense foods, and just other support systems, like seeing a therapist, or having a direct line to a doctor who knew my history, kind of thing. And so over time, like over these 2 years that we were in Philippines, there were just different things that happened. We experienced an earthquake while we were there. We experienced a huge super typhoon in the eye of the storm coming through where we were staying.
Wow.
We experienced towards the end of our time there, the volcano becoming active and us needing to be evacuated. And so there was just a lot, a lot of these themes of unrest and stress that were at play that whole time. And I don't think my nervous system really ever fully settled. It was always a little on edge. And yet, going back to Dan and I having different experiences there, I think you can extend your Peace Corps time if it's approved. I think for at least 6 months, maybe a year. And I was so like in my mind driven, like, no, I'm going to stay here another year. And Dan at that time was like, well, I'm feeling complete, like with my project and like what I've experienced and accomplished here. And what really made that deciding factor was the Mount Mayon, the volcano becoming active and us being forced to be evacuated.
Yeah.
And we were in a holding pattern in Manila for about a month and a half of like determining Peace Corps staff determining if we were going back, if we weren't. And so yeah, it was just this holding pattern of unknown. We used the time to get our English language certificates, like teaching English or TEFL certificates during that time, and just trying to use the time in a way that felt supportive, not knowing if we would go back and be able to say goodbye to our community or reintegrate there again. And it turned out that at a certain point, like after those 6-ish weeks, Peace Corps decided that we were going to be let go and have interrupted service. And so it just left us in this place of kind of needing to figure out our life in a matter of a weekend of kind of what was next.
Wow. And so what happened next? Like, how did you get back to the States and realize you were like, wow, this health issue is more interesting than you thought? Or was it a continuation of like connecting to like that deeper connection with yoga that kind of took you down a path? Like what was the next piece?
Yeah. So in that time of being in Manila, I went to one of the doctors there to talk about what I had been experiencing. Because since I had stopped taking birth control, my menstruation never came back. And so for, at that point, 2 years, I hadn't had a menstrual cycle. And so that was me going to a Manila gynecologist and talking to her about options. Like, her recommendation was more so to go back on birth control, but I know I didn't want that. And it was kind of an interesting exchange of, expressing, advocating for what I wanted, and then kind of being received by a little bit of laughter, called a hippie and that sort of thing. And
in the Philippines, this sounds funny.
Like, I know.
This wasn't in the US. This sounds like an American doctor.
So it was definitely a westernized hospital, that's for sure. So I just felt like I wasn't being met where I needed to be met. And so that really led to trusting, like starting to trust, like, no, like sticking with how I want to go forward. We ended up staying in Asia for a couple more months, actually doing our first work away. We had friends who had planned to visit us with their 3-year-old son in the Philippines, and were coming basically 2 months after we were let go. So we spent the time down in Malaysia doing a work away and just starting to process what just happened, and kind of waiting for our friends. And so, had a beautiful experience with them. Of course, couldn't show them our hometown there because of the volcano, but rerouted, And after spending a couple weeks with them, that's when we returned to the States. And Dan, for a long time, really felt the call to go back to a town that he grew up in, that really lifted him up, that raised him up and supported him, which is in a sweet town in North Idaho called Sandpoint. And so I had been there a couple times before and fallen in love with it. It's really beautiful in terms of the nature and access to nature that you have. And so I was a yes, and that was the plan. And so we did return back to Sandpoint, and that was me starting to seek out alternative healing. And so in that town, there are many holistic healers. I started seeing a naturopathic doctor, a homeopathic doctor as well, and started really addressing some of these underlying root pieces that I had been overriding for so long. And at this time, even before leaving the Peace Corps, I really realized, while I love coastal resource management, while I'm passionate about the environment and protecting Mother Earth and supporting Mother Earth and living in alignment with her, there was also a reality being there and volunteering that, a family who can't put food on the table, or a family who's struggling with major health complications, isn't necessarily thinking to not burn their trash or throwing trash outside or using a plastic straw. My mind started opening up to how I really want to serve people.
Mm-hmm.
And before we left there, even started to put on like a walking group for women, and wanted to start teaching yoga and movement there before we were evacuated. And so, that carried through returning to the States and really wanting to seek out mentors in the holistic wellness field, and for my own personal health first. And then, that also started to compound and really awaken up the healer inside of me. And seeing a naturopathic doctor shifted into seeing an acupuncturist, fertility awareness educator, started to get empowered about tracking my cycles, started to understand my moon cycle even more clearly, building up a relationship with my own womb, my own power, my own body.
Yeah.
And there came a point where that work with that practitioner transitioned into seeing a nutritionist and talking more about food. And so, yes, there is like a trajectory of starting to dive into health and wellness from different sides of the holistic spectrum. At that time, too, like right when we landed back in the States there, I hopped into a waitressing job, which was extremely stressful at the most popular restaurant. So, of course, my cortisol, my stress was like increasing even more from returning, like not really having or feeling the support of transitioning back. Like the reverse culture shock is real. And then, at a certain point, there was an opportunity that popped up to work for a conservation organization, a nonprofit in town. And so I pursued it, and it was, there were a lot of beautiful aspects about it. And, it looked great on paper. It matched my degree. And here I was again, falling back into the patterning and the programming, and just pursuing that original path of what I thought was right. And, this is when my health started to rear its head again, of like imbalances of, I stayed with that job for 2 years, but at the very towards the end of that time, like had another one of those like mysterious seizure episodes. And it was just this major red flag that something needed to change.
Yeah.
And that was about the same time I was seeing this naturopathic or this nutritionist who also kind of turned into more of a coach and really educating me and empowering me to come back to my heart, to really recognize aspects of my job that weren't serving me, that relationships in the job weren't serving me, and just needing to create a supported exit plan. And so that's really, that was like another huge snap of having another fellow woman in the healing field recognize the need for a big life transition and how difficult that can be. But that's like where my life at that point was, of like needing to make a really big shift. And that was really the start of where I'm here now, of shifting out of that conservation job and answering the call to become a healer myself. And that dovetailed with starting to see an Ayurvedic practitioner, which just like opened my mind so much more, and having her support through this challenging time of still not having a menstrual cycle now for close to 4.5 years. And it was really working with her and all of these compounding steps of, you know, support from other practitioners, of leaving that job. The moment I left that job, exactly 1 month later, my menstrual cycle returned. And it was this like whole awakening, opening of like, oh my gosh, okay, like shifting the vector of my life to be more aligned with where I'm headed. And it's interesting because a few months after that, my menstrual cycle actually stopped again for almost another year. But now I had the tools. I had so much more support from the community, from practitioners, from friends, from myself, to be able to navigate that time with grace and compassion, and really also wake up to the importance of our environment. Like at that time, I was living in a bit of a stressful housing situation. And, 9 months after stopping my moon again, when my partner and I left that housing situation, my moon came back a month later, and it's been back ever since. And now that's been, close to 5 years now. But yeah, I mean, because of my own health journey and struggles, and what I found out later, like I had PCOS. I found out later, like I was navigating Epstein-Barr virus, in the Philippines. We had dengue fever, like so many compounding things over time with a stressful primal programming to begin with. It was challenging, and yet, I still pursued answering the call. Like right when we got back to the States, I pursued holistic health school. That led into going to life coaching school, to then go into studying the medicine wheel and energy work, and, ultimately to finding profit for keeps, and really addressing this money piece.
Yeah. So before we move on to like what you're building now, I'm just curious, just because this seems like your body is very clear on when things are aligned versus not. Like for a lot of women, your menstrual cycle is a thing you wish would never come back, right? Like it's something we wish we were not saddled with like as women, right?
Yeah.
And like in the negative were those strange seizures that were happening, like, hey, you're out of alignment, are you paying attention? And then you're to tell you you're on the right path, your moon cycle comes back. And it's like that is a very clear signal on like yes or no. Which is kind of wild,
Absolutely.
right? Like the wisdom of the body is insane. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, that was the best feedback.
Yeah. So do you have any maybe tips or suggestions for women? Because in general, before we go to the money piece, in how to start to bring yourself to be paying attention to what your body is telling you, just because we at least until COVID, we went to work when we were sick. Some people still do because they don't have a choice, right? But like you went on your trip even though your body was trying to tell you that something was really wrong. We've committed to something. We feel guilty if we're like, man, I really could use a nap, right? Like there's so many things. It feels like you're being lazy to take a nap, not that maybe your body really needs it. So do you have any tips or lessons learned that maybe would help like a woman who's listening now, who's just been like, what? My moon is a good thing? Like I tell my body to like be quiet so that I can keep it going, right? Like to keep doing my job or whatever else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, our sweet bodies are our vessels, right? If we're overriding what our body is telling us, at some point that's going to catch up to us. Mm-hmm. And it might be fine like in the beginning or in the interim. And yet at some point, our bodies are going to speak louder and louder if we're not receiving the message. And that can express in so many different ways. You know, in my case, it was these seizures. It was like now having PCOS and no menstrual cycle, which were pretty hard to ignore.
Yeah.
And so there's such power in listening and just being aware of, and I think it can be hard when we live in a culture that, especially for women, we're taught to override that and go to work, or we're taking care of the kids, or putting others first, or just like going, doing. And this can create or start to create this disconnection with our body, with our own internal wisdom. And that's really where our vitality is. Like that's our chi body. Like that's where our power is. Is having having alignment, is being aligned, like head, heart, womb. Like, this is talking about health beyond just our physical body. This is also the mental, emotional. It's the spiritual and energetic sides. It's the soul's journey that each of us have, that each of us are walking. And I think, there's so much support online because we're all going through different things resonate with us. Like, there are so many podcasts now, books, holistic practitioners that are accessible now online, in our own hometowns, perhaps in neighboring towns and places. I would encourage people who are open to feel into what resonates, maybe going to a workshop on healing or a sound healing, or, trying out acupuncture, or listening to their own intuition about what might feel supportive. But it does start with awareness. And I think, a big part of that for me was also building up a meditation practice of stillness, like creating just even a moment of stillness to start to open up that conversation with our bodies, with our wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I think there's two pieces here, right? Is that giving yourself a little bit of quiet so that you potentially can feel where your body feels is like something feels strange, right? Or some knowing comes through, or you start to notice that something feels very different at like when something is happening. And like following the thing that is curious to you, right? That feels like, oh, I would love to try that. That sounds really good, right? Because like I'm open to trying almost any health modality, right? Like if I had all the money in the world, I'd be going to see everybody. And if there's something new, I'm like, ooh, how cool. Let me go try it. Because some of them don't work for me. Some of them I love.
Yeah.
And all of it is fun to me. It's just fun. But it's like, I never get up. Well, now I don't get upset when it doesn't work for me. It just ends up as a data point for me of like, how interesting. That didn't do anything for me, but this other thing, but somebody else comes and it's like the most profound experience of their life. And it's just so fun to be like you said, we have all of these tools that are new and some that are ancient. It's like, explore them, right? Like, who knows what's going to happen? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there's something out there for everyone, in this type of healing and wellness space.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And I think, we reap the benefits when we have that connection with ourselves, and in whatever way that takes shape or form. It pays dividends to be living in alignment with our heart, to be connected with our joy and what brings us joy, to be making decisions that are in alignment with our values, with how we want to feel when we wake up in the morning, like day to day.
Yeah. I feel like this might be the perfect segue into what you're building now, because it kind of takes all of these pieces that are very important to you, that are like these values of how you want to live your life and how you want to empower women to live their lives and help them live their lives. I'm curious though, how coming from this health, holistic wellness, where does the money piece come into for you? Like how did that draw you in and feel like such an important piece to work with people?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, like growing up in a household quite stressed with money, and witnessing parents stress with money, especially my mom was an entrepreneur, but like also ended up going back into the workforce, traditional workforce, at a certain time. But my dad has been an entrepreneur pretty much his whole life. And just seeing the chronic stress and grind really painted this picture of what entrepreneurship is, and a relationship with money that wasn't necessarily co-creative. And so from very early on, these threads of money had always woven in. During college, I would avoid spending any money. Like that's how it manifested, or just reflected in my life, of just being a chronic saver. And Dan and I went into the Peace Corps. Dan had student loans. Like we didn't really talk about money as a couple at that time yet. And so then coming out of the Peace Corps, there were some like reality checks. Like no longer were we on our family healthcare plan anymore. Like, we also were confronted with loans that, like student loans, just starting to have these conversations of what to put our money towards as we start to build our life together. And
Mm-hmm.
it was challenging. It was challenging to have grounded conversations, like in-body conversations with, my best friend, my partner, who came from a similar scarcity mindset with money. And so there was a lot of friction. And I started noticing this because I became a holistic wellness practitioner. I started seeing clients, and at the end of the day, I realized if my clients were going to bed stressed out how they were going to pay their bills next month, or had these chronic underlying stresses and anxiety with money, then I could support them in creating the most aligned nutritional plan for them, the most aligned movement plan for them, or what have you. And yet, if there's still this piece with money, all that is going to support, yet it's not getting to the root. And so this is where I saw in my own life of how money stress was driving a lot of beliefs, a lot of the engagement I had with life, of holding on, of protecting, of kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop, so we can't spend any money. I saw there was such a need for this. And even the fact of money can be such a taboo topic in general, right? It's like sex, like they're taboo topics we're not normally talking about, even to some of the closest people in our circle. And so I started to follow mentors and picking up books, like whether it was like the Millennial Money Woman, like I started following the FIRE movement, like, and for those, it's like financial independence, retire early movement. I started picking up books from, now I'm forgetting his name because I get him confused with another individual, but just more, I was eating up resources. And it wasn't until going through life school that we started learning about money. And they placed the module so particularly right at the end of our year-long program, and talked about money in the lens of the feminine part of money and the masculine side of money. So these two sides of money, and started talking about money as an energy.
Yeah.
And my ears, my body really perked up and wanted to know more. And so that, along with other resources, guided me to learn about profit first. And that's what was taught in my life coaching program. And at that time, I was using YNAB, You Need a Budget, an app for your phone. I had been using that for years, starting to track and budget with my partner. Because before that, my partner and I were like writing down everything we spent, like by hand, like in a little notebook. And then things would change. We would spend things, get reimbursed. And I'm like, this is impossible. So I moved to like a spreadsheet, and that helped for a while. But then, YNAB just like blew my mind, opened it up. Dan and I could both have it on our phones. And so that was good. Like, it was like, okay, we're starting to track things. And then through another money mentor, Kate Northrup, I found Amber Duggar, who is the creator of Profit for Keeps. And it was just like, oh my gosh, she talked about, this blending of profit first principles, like this masculine side of money, as well as using YNAB. And she wove it all into this root of your profit for joy. Like, what brings you joy? Like, why are we even making money? Like, what do we want to spend? Right? Like, what are our dreams? Like, why are we doing what we're doing? Like, how can we be in co-creation with money? And so it was just such a higher, hopeful, expansive, and rooted approach to money, I was like, I need to learn this. I need to know more. And went through her training program for a couple years. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm ready for the next level. And this is when she rolled out her coaching certification, which you and I both joined. And it was like, yes, I want to support women through the lens of through the holistic lens with the root of money, and really using that as a gateway to freedom and empowerment. And so, going through my own experience with it, with my partner too, and just how much it's transformed my life, having a framework for both my personal and my business life, it gave me this incredible clarity. And I love the word that you've been using, like this runway. Like I had this clear runway and knowing that I could leave the job I was at, at this time. I was actually right after that conservation job that I just needed to leave for my own health. I worked for the Waldorf school in our town, which was beautiful. It was just so lovely to be around kids. I worked there for just over a year, and through this framework knew I could leave this job and fully step into being an entrepreneur and running my own business.
Right.
And it was such a gift. And then now fast forward, that was back in 2021, right before 2022. Like fast forward here over 4 years later, this framework has gifted the runway where Dan has been able to transition out of his teaching job, and I'm able to continue growing my business. And we left the States in the middle of November to go on a 6-month travel to a Spanish-speaking country. And we've been here in Mexico since fall, living our life, not needing to work if we don't want to. I'm passionate about what I'm building and creating, so I am doing that. Yet Dan is in a point of ready for a career transition. And this has gifted him time and space to just be, to reflect, to dream into his next chapter while I'm building mine. And it's just been so beautiful. Yeah, we've been able to do multiple workaways, like this international volunteer program in 3 different spots here. That's why right now we're at a permaculture farm with 37 goats, bunnies, and chickens and dogs, helping them build their garden beds, helping them with their alternative building structures behind me. It's been a hoot, and it's enlivened something in me of just being international again. Like this thread of travel is a value for me, is a value for Dan. We've wanted to learn and speak Spanish and become fluent. Like we're taking steps with that. We're actually doing it. This is something that was on a list, on my Profit for Joy list. And here we are living it. It just tickles my heart that it's possible. Our dreams are possible. It's beyond the numbers.
It is. So I know at the beginning you talked about that you want to help other wellness professionals kind of live in this more empowered state, actually be able to stay as health providers, as these providers, not feel burnt out, really step into their magic of providing these services to the world because we really need it, but be able to live a really joyful life without that money stress. So what are you, what's your program? What are you offering right now? Who are you calling in?
Yeah, thanks. Well, so much of my work has been one-on-one coaching, which I love. And, I put on group workshops. I guide movement, mindful movement weekly in a group online. Yet I really wanted to build something special for this next stage of my life, for this next stage of my business, and really create an intimate small group program for women, for heart-led women in the healing and wellness space. And so I've created this small group program called Money Mastery Circle. And in that, it's going to be a group of no more than 5 women. It's going to be a 6-month journey. The first few months are more focused on the personal side of money, of really building this framework on the personal side. The last 3 months are more focused on your business and what you're dreaming in. And it's really a place where you are going to be building a cash flow system that actually works for your life and your business. You know, you're going to come away with feeling clear, confident, and in control of your money, and genuinely feeling good with money. You know, this is a group where there's going to be monthly calls. I'm going to weave in also like the holistic lens with it and bring in, you know, mindset work, energy work with it, the masculine and feminine dynamic of money. And there's also going to be times where there's dedicated one-on-one monthly support with me. So I'm stoked. I really am just calling in any woman in this field that feels aligned with wanting to up level and upgrade their relationship with money, who really wants to be living in alignment with their joy, and for their business to support the life that they truly want to live, you know, and not the other way around. And so this program is going to begin on May 25th. And, you know, the timing feels really neat. Like, this is an opportunity to have this experience and up level your money before the turning of the year. Like, we're going to be finishing by November of 2026. And what a gift. Like, this is learning this framework is one of the greatest gifts you could offer your financial life. And the ripple effect, you know, is immense. As I've shared, as Victoria shares on her platform, you can't quantify it. And so, yeah, I would love, like, for anybody out there that's listening live or tuning in, like, if you're open to connecting more, if you're intrigued by any of this and want to learn more, book a clarity call with me. Like, let's have a warm, no pressure call of just exploring where you are with your money and really understanding, being able to share what you're wanting to create, what you're wanting to build in your own life, and whether or not like Money Mastery Circle is in alignment for you and your next steps and where you're headed. So yeah, I'm excited calling in 5 women for this experience. Please reach out.
Amazing. And we will put the link to book the call in the show notes. Shelby, if people aren't ready to book a call, should they follow you on Instagram? Or where could they find you?
You're welcome to follow me on Instagram. I'd say I'm a little newer to social media, but hoping to increase that and engagement. But yeah, my handle's at Shelby Renae Wellness. I'll also share with Victoria in the show notes the masterclass that I just taught with Amber Duggar, the creator of Profit for Keeps. We just taught it this week. So I'll drop that link to register for the masterclass replay if you want to learn more about Profit for Keeps. But yeah, reach out. You could always reach out to at hello at shelbyrenae.com. That's my
We'll put that in the show notes as well. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. And we'll put your LinkedIn profile as well, in case that's easier for people to message you there.
Yeah, that's great. You know, yeah, Instagram, Facebook business page, and LinkedIn are where I'm at right now.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Shelby. Thank you, everybody who's listened. And that is the episode for today. And we will talk again soon.
Thanks, everyone.